Hey there, make it snappy. Welcome back to another episode of the Caffeinated Librarians. Today we are doing the classic 1940s screwball comedy directed by Howard Hawks, His Girl, Friday. Stars Cary Grant, Rosalind Russell. It's a fast movie. That's why I was talking so fast.
I feel like we should all have cigars and drinks, and we should be wearing hats.
They smoked a crazy amount in this movie, too.
They did.
Did you see how thick her cigarette was? At one point, she's in the jail cell with talking to the guy, and like it is like the most poorly wrapped.
She was not smoking any of that like slim cigarettes for women type thing.
No, she needed a lot.
She wanted the full thing. She got the nicotine plus editions of those Marlboro Reds.
This is ostensibly a sort of romantic comedy. In practice, it's not that at all.
No.
This is a movie about terrible people.
Yeah. Cary Grant, the original Mr. Get Your Girl. Mr. Steal Your Girl.
What a horrible human he was.
By the end of the movie, I was just kind of like, that was the most elaborate scheme to get your girlfriend back I've ever seen.
He's doing Bugs Bunny type stuff.
Why?
He does not change. He does not learn.
Nope.
I love him.
He gets an innocent man sent to jail three times.
Like 4 times almost.
I did like his
counterfeit money. Kills his mom.
He doesn't kill the mom. He has her kidnapped.
That's right.
He has her kidnapped by his funny little short friend.
Who's in the counterfeiting business and probably jack of all trades.
Yeah, who's also very sleight of hand.
Yes.
He stole everything from Bruce. What's his name?
Yeah,
yes, Bruce Baldwin.
Bruce Baldwin, yeah.
Yeah, Bruce.
But it stars Cary Grant as Walter Burns, who is a newspaper editor who is fast-talking and awful to everyone around him. He loves schemes so much.
He has to do anything to get the perfect scoop.
And he finds out his ex-wife is getting remarried to a nice, boring insurance salesman who talks nice and slow.
They're going to Albany.
Named Bruce Baldwin, and he is determined to get his ex-wife and former star reporter Hildy Johnson back. And he concocts schemes.
Pretty much at the drop of a hat concocts these schemes.
Oh my god. In like the first 30 minutes when the time they were leaving kept getting pushed up and you could see him just like stop for a second and be like, okay, I got it.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like I only have ever seen Cary Grant in like his dramatic roles. So to see him in a screwball comedy is really like surprising almost.
He is one of the funniest actors ever.
Well, I mean, the first screwball comedy I ever saw him in was
Arsenic and Old
Lace. Yeah. And that was like, it's not Cary Grant. It is Cary Grant. Holy cow, he's versatile. Yay!
This is actually the second screwball he did with Howard Hawks. He did Bringing Up Baby the year before this, I think. Because they used to just, Howard Hawks would just make like 2 or 3 movies a year at sometimes. And yeah.
Interesting.
But initial thoughts.
So, Joe, since you mentioned about how fast they talk, like I found IMDb has some trivia on the film.
How fast can you say this trivia?
I can't.
So not fast.
So it is estimated that the normal rate of verbal dialogue in most films is around 90 words a minute. In His Girl Friday, the delivery has been clocked at 240 words a minute.
What? That's more than double.
And they ad-libbed a lot. The director encouraged people, like if a character was talking, for the other character to talk over their lines.
I noticed that a lot.
To sort of keep up with the fast pace, and not to mention, they talked about the amount of microphones they had to have. I think at one point they had 53.
Yeah,
or something
multi-track recording was not existent yet.
Yeah.
So they just had a sound guy switching on and off microphones.
Wow, that makes it even more impressive. Wow,
and
that's
because
insane.
of the length of dialogue, they went over the scheduled conclusion of the filming.
I'm curious how long the script is, because the movies are pretty tight, 95 minutes or whatever, but the script has to be pretty massive.
Pages and
pages.
Yeah, I would think so, right? Yeah.
I'm reading another fun fact for Simona's thing. Apparently Rosalind Russell thought while shooting that she didn't have have as many good lines as Cary Grant had, so she literally hired an advertisement writer through her brother-in-law and had him write more clever lines for the dialogue. And it says since Howard Hawks allowed for spontaneity and ad-libbing, he and many of the cast and crew didn't notice it. But Grant knew she was up to something, leading him to greet her every morning by saying, "What have you got today?"
Well, she was phenomenal.
Yeah, Rosalind Russell was amazing.
She
I don't
was
think
outstanding.
I've seen her in anything else,
Yeah.
but wow.
Yeah.
I
The
just-
opening when she... I'm sorry. Go ahead. Yeah, I'm gonna... Hold on. No, go ahead. I'm just joking.
Well, I love the character Hilly. She reminds me of Nora from The Thin Man.
Yes,
They're
definitely.
They're
Yeah.
just that
Good
like
comparison, yeah.
strong, like independent women, but is like okay to like rely or like lean on
Yeah.
their leading man, so to speak.
So in the original play, Hildy Johnson is a man.
Okay.
And Howard Hawks just read lines with his secretary, and he was like, "I like this coming from a dame, haha." And so yeah,
Just like
that.
Well, one thing that I found interesting too, because considering when this film was made, it was after the code was enforced.
Yes.
And because
This
like
movie
they
has
mentioned
no
divorce.
morality.
No, they
No.
mentioned
I love
divorce,
it.
So-
which I thought was interesting.
Screwball
Like,
comedies did that a lot.
Okay.
Oftentimes, there's like a certain section of them called comedies of remarriage, where a
Okay.
couple would get divorced and then they'd go mess around with other people, but then by the end of the movie they'd get remarried.
Wow.
And is that why? And not to like cut you off, but is that why they were able to get like the divorce, like to say the word divorce past the censors, because it was by the end they were going to get back together?
More or less, yeah.
Okay.
She almost
But-
seemed like defeated, though.
Yeah, no, it's not a happy ending.
No.
He
No, he
immediately.
wears her down and forces her back into the role
She's
that
she is
playing.
just excited to work again,
Yeah,
but like
I think she remembers the excitement
Yeah.
of working as a journalist, and like the boring like housewife life doesn't suit her. Married life
No.
doesn't suit her this way. She needs someone who is equally as adventurous and will get in trouble. She needs like a Bonnie and Clyde, like ride or die kind of like partner.
Walter is still awful.
Yes.
Oh,
So
no.
terrible
he
person.
definitely is, but I gotta admire his perseverance and dedication. He is goal oriented and he like sees it through.
Him being played by Cary Grant also helps because it's just like, oh, here's just like a beautiful man.
Yeah.
and-
Yeah.
I almost wonder if that's why it's excused. 'Cause
Oh,
his-
100%.
absolutely.
Yeah.
It's like the Hollywood hot boy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Screwballs are really fascinating as a genre because they were really sort of like satiric and acidic a lot of times, and like were really sort of like criticizing marriage and stuff a lot, and like other romantic movies of the era, but like they kind of got it in easy because it's like, no, it's just like a light, funny comedy, and don't worry, they'll get remarried at the end. Like,
Wow.
Yeah, I was another like interesting fact talking about the code. Basically, so the director was able to ignore production code objections to Hildy's bribing the jailer, which I guess was a thing, to get an interview with condemned man Earl Williams, the kidnapping of Bruce's mother, and the attempts to smuggle Williams out of the court building. One area where he deferred to them, however, was in the characterization of reporters as, quote, the scum of Western civilization. To soften the film's depictions of the Fourth Estate, he added a written prologue setting the film in another era.
that was hysterical, by the
Yeah.
way. Just being like, no, they're nothing like the
Yeah.
reporters of today. Like,
Yeah.
it's the most wink, nudge
Yeah.
type of card.
Yeah, so that's how he was able to get away with it, where like they're not wearing period specific clothing. He said it in this like made up fantastical time.
But they mentioned Hitler.
Yeah, I
like
was
a
just gonna
couple
say.
times, which
Yeah.
You
like,
put Hitler on the funny pages.
Yeah, I guess it doesn't really matter as long as they weren't condemning the press. I guess that's all that really matters.
Speaking of the press, how the press is depicted in this, I loved it.
Yeah.
Well, I like
The-
that the opening sequence, literally they had like almost a disclaimer.
Yeah.
They're like, so this takes place during a time when the press did anything to get the story. Illegal things. And they're like, here's, anyways, here.
I just liked how they were just jerks, and they were hilarious. They were
yeah, and they never face any consequences
Yeah,
for
no.
it. They're just openly mocking the mayor
Yeah.
and the sheriff to their faces.
Yeah, neither of them had any power.
No.
Yeah.
Which speaks volumes.
Yeah.
People.
I honestly really love how corrupt the local government is portrayed as.
Yeah.
It's really funny. Like the sheriff giving the criminal his gun.
Yeah.
Can we talk about the scene when is it the breakout when Earl Williams breaks out? And I started laughing out loud as I was watching the scene when Hildy tackles one of the guys, like she full on runs and just tackles him.
Yeah.
Oh my god, that's
rough editing there too.
Oh.
She just jumps off camera and then all of a sudden she's got him.
They had a couple moments where they had some really interesting like camera techniques. I'm not gonna lie. I think the one where they're hiding the the fugitive inside the little desk. First off, I've had those desks.
Did you ever
fit
hide them?
anywhere? I can't fit in those. I'm like, how'd they fit him in there?
Maybe
must
they
be
were
way
larger
bigger.
at one point.
They might have been way bigger. But they hit him in there, and then there was a scene when they finally catch him in there, and the camera zooms in dramatically, and he's like, "I'm ready to die," and I'm like, "Great shot." My favorite shot of the whole movie was just the dramatic. I don't care. I'm ready to die.
I felt so bad for Earl. I was
it's a movie that is very cavalier in a lot of things, but Earl and Molly are played very straight and serious.
Yeah, and they're also
Molly's the one who's defending him.
Yeah, the one who
right?
jumps out of the window, and
And
the movie just sort
I
of
love how
loses
they
all
treat
air
her
for
like
a minute,
garbage.
and you're like, oh my god.
Yeah.
They treat her like straight garbage. She's like, "Oh, now you want to listen to me," and I'm like, "Yeah, now you want to listen to her."
And are we supposed to assume that Earl and Molly are both of a lower class? I know Earl for sure is maybe
Yes.
more working
Yeah.
That's
class.
how
than
it
Definitely,
Molly.
yeah,
no,
Yeah,
he's
just
lost
from
his
the
jobs
way
and-
Broke.
just from the way they speak, and not so much of how they dress, but in old movies, and I think Joe, if you can speak to this, can correct me if I'm wrong, but if they're trying to depict somebody of a lower class, it's how they talk, is how they predominantly
Sorry.
depict
Yeah,
someone
and,
from
like-
a
On
the
lower
loose again.
class.
The movie definitely, I think, just has a sharp divide between how the reporters talk.
Yeah.
Very fast and constantly joking, and
Yeah.
and how for lack of a better term, civilians talk, and
Yeah.
they're all slow and say what they
Yeah.
mean.
The
Yeah.
reporters are very interesting, especially if they have to talk that fast, because it's they have to. It's almost like a not sleight of hand, but almost with words.
Yeah.
Because it's the more you're talking to somebody, the more you can dissuade somebody to getting an answer because you're trying to concentrate on the first question. Normally you have to think about the first question, but if they're asking you another question, then they're like,
No, even in the scene where
Yeah.
Hildy's interviewing Earl in jail, and she's leading him down a very specific path.
Yeah.
"Oh yeah, no."
Yeah.
But I think also she recognized, because at that point he doesn't
She's a
care
little
what
mustache.
happens to him though. He doesn't care what happens to himself, because even when he's being interviewed by that doctor, which that seems like one bogus kind of psychological interview, he's saying, just let me die. So, and I was trying to figure out why he had, what led him to, was he fired from his job? He was
Yeah.
fired.
Yeah,
Okay.
he was broke, and he ended up with a gun in his hand, and he shot a black police officer.
And I like how they kind of snuck in a political angle with that, because that was the actual concern, that the officer was black. So that's why they said, we got to figure out a way. It was kind of interesting how they snuck that in, sort of,
Yeah.
which I don't know how often that would have been spoken about, but that was interesting too. I also wanted to talk about the way Hildy is regarded by her colleagues. There's a lot of respect.
Oh yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's what I appreciate too, and she holds her own. I love how when they try to get snide, or they try to get a little not sexist, but they when they talk about, oh, you're gonna be how she can quickly silence them and then move on to the next
Well,
thing.
She wears the pants. She's one of
Yeah.
the best writers they've ever had. You don't
And-
want
and
to
I
disrespect the best writer in the place.
No, and that's why I was able to draw comparisons between her character and Nora Charles, because
Yeah.
they're both women who really hold their own in situations that I think otherwise anyone else probably couldn't have.
And I also noticed
Howard Hawks is sort of fascinating because he was very much anti-feminist and very conservative, but at the same time, all of his movies have very strong female characters in them.
Interesting.
So I there's a real contradiction to him there, but he loves that. There's an archetype called Hawksian women, of just a woman who is career oriented. She, fast talking, quick witted, that sort of thing, and commands respect Hildy does.
Well, it's interesting because I know Simona has the
Yeah.
fact sheet here.
Yeah.
There was one fun fact that stood out to me about herself, the actress. Apparently, she was very insecure on the first day of shooting, because during the scenes, like, he would give critiques to, like, Cary Grant, but he wouldn't say anything to her, and she wasn't the first pick. She was, like, very bottom of all the picks of women that, you know, he was looking for the role. And it wasn't until, like, she talked to Cary Grant about it and, like, opened up to him and said, like, you know, this is me. I'm like, you know, why is he not talking to me? And he was just like, if he didn't like it, like, he'd tell you.
Right.
Flat out. And he said, like, when she asked Hawks how he felt about her work, he said, you just keep pushing him around the way you're doing. And that was enough to, like, make her, like, put her to ease about the whole thing.
She gives, like, the perfect performance in this.
No, I love her to death. I love their dynamic. I love that he's a sneaky, conniving reporter looking to get whatever he wants.
Amanda,
jealous man.
The dynamics in this are, like, straight up Better Call Saul. Cary Grant as Jimmy, Rosalind Russell as Kim Wexler, and Bruce Baldwin as Howard Hamlin.
Oh God. No, I'm not gonna go back and, like, I gotta jump back into Better Call Saul and be like, oh no.
Also, Bruce Baldwin, hysterical.
Yes.
I lost my mind at, like, every stupid, well-meaning line that came out of his mouth. I also lost my mind when Cary Grant just clearly forgot what a line was, and he was just like, he looks like, who's that guy in the movies? Ralph Bellamy. Because Ralph Bellamy is the guy playing it.
I think my favorite character was Joe Pettibone.
I lost my mind.
Was the my wife guy constantly, and he never broke from that. I love at the very end of his line, he's like, they badmouthed him. I was like, don't say that to my wife, Jill.
And she said you were trying to bribe me.
This is a man whipped by his wife.
But I love it. I love the mayor. I love that dog where he says, because he's like, no, but I did come here. It's like, no, you're going to pretend that you never came in, but I did come in. Well, you're going to pretend that you didn't come in.
The guy playing Pettibone was well known for his comic sneeze routines, which really highlights how different things were back then.
Yeah.
But I think he also voiced Sneezy in Snow White and the Seven Little Dwarfs.
Oh.
Interesting.
So cute. Oh, Sneezy.
So do you think he was at one point on vaudeville?
Fun and Fancy Free, too.
Probably.
Yeah.
I'm just assuming a man who looks like that with that mustache
he
had done some stage antics.
He reminded me very much of Stan and Ollie.
Yes,
Yeah.
he looked like Oliver Hardy. a
Oliver
lot.
Hardy, yeah.
Oh, he was just so cute. I liked him. Like, the mayor just trying to get him out of the door. He says, we'll handle that. No, we'll take care of that. Adorable. I love his character.
I think maybe my hardest laugh was when Louis kidnapped the old woman. That was
mother.
just deranged.
Throws her right over his shoulder.
Bruce's mother. That poor woman. Though she didn't like Hildy, so.
No, she did not. But do you blame her? No, I mean, obviously Hildy didn't. Hildy wasn't her true love. Was her job.
Yeah, but I think she's more of the mama's sort of boy, like someone who's like a helicopter mom, and no one's good enough for my son. So I think even if Hildy,
Probably. Yeah,
that's how she came across. Like,
Yeah.
you're not good enough. No one's good enough for my precious little
She tried to
cinnamon
call her
roll.
Little
mother.
angel
First of all,
boy.
too soon. Don't call her mom yet.
Yeah, like little cinnamon roll son.
Yeah.
Another fantastic moment. Hildy's on the phone in, like, the press room at the courthouse or whatever, and she gets, like, right back in reporter mode, and like all of the guys are just sitting there like,
Yeah.
She's back.
I like what she wrote too when she does that little write up explaining where they all like read like that little thing that she's written up for the guy, like explaining
For Earl.
why the guy did what
Yeah.
he did while Earl is still tucked in there, like inside the desk or whatever.
I have a question for you guys. Has anyone here seen Miracle on 34th Street?
Yeah.
yes.
So is it just me, or did one of the reporters look like the Macy psychiatrist
I'm pretty sure it was.
from Miracle on 34th Street?
Yeah. I'm pretty sure it was.
I'm not alone in that thought at
Yeah.
all.
I thought he was also in another movie that we watched. Maybe the one that you picked.
Thin Man?
Yeah.
The lawyer?
Maybe.
I don't think so. I think that was a different actor.
white people all look alike to me.
These black and white movies.
Oh, wow. Okay. The cinematographer for this also shot It's a Wonderful Life.
Oh,
It happened
wow.
one night. Mr. Smith goes to Washington. The lady from Shanghai.
wow. Good
Yeah.
filmography.
Yeah.
Wow.
That rules. Wow.
That is cool.
I love the tagline for this movie is the raciest love battle in years, a wild, witty whirlwind of hysterics.
What about Burns? Again, I
The
really...
raciest I've ever seen.
I thought, I liked his charisma, Burns, but I didn't really like him as a person. When he's making fun of Bruce for having an umbrella, it was like, is that really how you're going
it's a
to?
little cloudy out.
Is that really how you're going to emasculate him because he was smart and brought an
He's
umbrella?
a
Oh,
jealous
Hildy
man
led me to
looking for
believe you
all
were
the
a much
openings.
older man. I guess just, not old physically, but...
Look, he's jealous. He's trying to find little things he can try to make fun of him for because he's emasculated. The
Yeah.
fact that he didn't come prepared with an umbrella. He's not thinking about Hildy. The other person's thinking about Hildy, and they're preparedness.
I only noticed this because I saw saw it in writing, but at the end he walks out of the door in front of Hildy when in the beginning of the movie she's like, you don't walk in front of a woman, right?
That is true. Now that you mention that, yeah, he did. He walked out of the room before her at the end of the movie.
Because he's not a good guy.
No.
He has not
not.
learned anything.
No.
And yet, that's the one she chooses.
Yeah.
I'm finding some goofy things about the behind the scenes of certain scenes I didn't notice before. Apparently, there's a scene where in the press room when Hildy yanks the private phone out of. She yanks the private line telephone out and throws it in the corner.
Mm-hmm.
But in the next scene, the phone is connected again when she calls the morning press.
That's funny.
There's a bunch of things that have gone disappeared in certain scenes, but I think because of the fast-paced nature of the movie, you don't realize
Hawks
any of these.
also just never cared about continuity that much. The movie we're doing next week, The Big Sleep, is another Hawks joint, and that one is
Such a great movie.
legitimately. There are no answers for a lot of things in it. It is there. Some of the plot points are legit impossible, but you just have to roll with it because it's a vibe.
Yeah.
His
they're
definition.
Humphrey Bogart and Lauren Bacall.
Yeah.
and
you can't beat that.
Hawks'
no.
definition of a great movie was 3 good scenes and no bad ones. So
I like that.
Because they're saying
Right.
also when Hildy lights her cigarette in the restaurant, she takes it out of her mouth and waves out the match. There's an instant cut to over the shoulder, and the cigarette is in her mouth again. And I'm just oh, okay. These are little
But
things
that-
that I'm hold on.
But that
Couldn't she
happens-
just have put the cigarette back in her mouth?
Yeah, that happens a lot though. Still, I just
Yeah.
have fun looking at the continuity errors of shows or films. Biggest one was the Starbucks cups in Game of Thrones that were appearing.
That was laziness.
They had Starbucks in
They
Westeros.
were lazy at the end.
That
Are
became
you
a
a
running gag.
little heated about that, Lou?
Yes. Yes. They ruined what really could have been. Sorry. This movie, good.
the scene when Walter's on the phone and he's just shouting and Hildy's at the typewriter and saying what she's typing and while also arguing with Bruce.
Yes. I was gonna bring up that scene.
blew my goddamn mind.
Because that's really hard to do.
I don't know how any of them kept in sync.
Yeah.
Also, from a character standpoint, Bruce, she's not coming with you.
No.
I love
Get
that
it,
scene.
get
That's how
it.
I feel.
But it's interesting though because you can see how Walter and Hildy are both talking really fast and Bruce is talking slower
He's the
and
simpleton.
trying to keep up with them, but he clearly can't. It was that whole juxtaposition was very interesting to just watch.
I really like that you can tell this is from a play because
Yeah.
the back half all happens in one room, but it never takes you out of it. You never feel stagey. I don't know, you're always in it and
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah.
Yeah, and honestly, you never really even I don't think I would have even had that realization unless you said that. And I'm oh yeah, wow, yeah, the last 45 minutes of this have been all in this one room. But there's so much movement, there's so much fluidity to it that you don't really even notice, and you're just kind of along for this ride.
Yeah.
I loved whenever the reporters would like come rushing back in
Yeah.
and like all just give conflicting information
yeah.
to the papers. Like,
Can we talk about the moment when Hildy is talking to Earl, trying to figure out why he shot the police officer, and he mentions this talk that he went to, or this guy that was talking about something like utility or like objects of use or
Yeah.
something like that. And how she says, well, what is a gun for? And he goes, oh, you shoot. She says, well, then weren't you using the gun to fulfill its purpose? You shot.
What do you do with a gun?
Yeah,
It's
and
like,
logically,
oh,
I was like, I don't know how that's going to fly in the courtroom. Well, you shoot a gun, that's why I shot it. But I was trying to understand that bit because he mentions how he heard this man talking about it.
they were trying to get him off on an insanity defense,
And
and
he couldn't get
of
the
like
insanity defense.
he was like, this is a guy who's clearly been put through the ringer mentally, and he's going off of like things he's heard from street preachers and stuff.
Oh, right.
Yeah, it was almost like we kind of mentioned this. I mentioned this to Joe earlier. It was, from 2023, and I don't think that the filmmaker had this in mind, but it's very interesting to kind of see like this movie. What year was this made?
1940.
1940. A movie made in 1940 where they're trying to justify a white man killing a black man.
It's definitely a little thorny in that area,
Yeah.
but like in a way that I think almost makes it a richer text, because it's just like there's like, I don't know, you can dissect that a lot and sort of go into it because
Yeah, it's kind of it was interesting, an interesting thing to see because it was a little jarring. You're like, oh, who's this guy? This guy just shot somebody, and they're trying to be like, oh no, you're crazy, right? You didn't mean to do that. But,
I guess it also, you think about from what lens they're viewing, because they want to be reelected.
Yeah.
So they're not concerned about the morality of the
dirty
situation.
politics.
They're concerned about politics. Whereas with Earl, I think he knows that he's guilty. He doesn't want to bother with the whole insanity. Whether or not he's definitely mentally unstable, that goes without saying. He's definitely been through something. But he recognizes that even if he is mentally unstable, that doesn't justify what he's done.
True.
Right.
And he wants to be punished for it.
Yeah.
But
Well, just because you plead insanity doesn't mean that you get off like scot-free.
No,
it just
no.
means that you.
this.
I don't know during the time period what that means. I know today's terms. It's like
I mean,
you get psycho-evaluated.
yeah, he'd be put in an
and
asylum,
you'd be put
like-
in a
yeah, but yeah.
place
I-
to help understand
I
why.
mean, this movie just has like no faith in any systems.
Yeah.
Like,
I like that though.
yeah, no,
That was-
it's
It's
very
dirty.
cynical.
That
Like,
that was a clear indication from the very start of the
yeah,
movie.
the newspaper men are terrible. The politicians are
Well,
terrible.
it's not just
Everyone's
that too.
awful.
Outside their window is literally the place where the guy's gonna get hung. And they're
Yeah.
yelling at the cops. That made me laugh so hard. They're like, "Hey, why don't you keep it down there?" Like, "Ah, shut up." And he's just like, "Oh, there's no respect for the press anymore." And I was like,
Another thing.
that line got me.
Another thing. When William escapes,
Earl.
Earl.
Earl,
Yeah.
Earl, when Earl escapes, and the police are just shooting. Like,
Yeah, there's an
shooting
there's an
at
odd
the whole
there's
building.
a,
They're
there's
right
a
next to
great
the
part
action.
where they start talking about all the people that actually got shot, and it's all like people related to the sheriff.
yeah, right.
Well, they're right. It seems like they're right next to the police station. They're
Yeah.
right next to the prison. They're right next to everything that's
Everything
wrong.
in the city is on one block.
Yeah, and they're shooting at the building, which is super cute and funny because the fact that they're like up there, they're like, "Oh my god!" And the cops start shooting at the building, and they go like,
what are
"Oh
you
no!"
doing?
Yeah, they're dodging gunfire.
Yeah, how are you
They're
missing
disrespecting
that
the
badly?
police. The police
But
are
they're very
disrespecting them.
calm about it. That's what I admired. Like, they're calm
Yeah,
under
right.
literal fire.
A bullet
It's
just
like-
comes into the window. It's like, hey, watch it down there.
I love their interactions with the cops. They're so great. I'm like, oh my god.
Yes.
I love
yeah.
everybody that's a part of the newspaper.
Oh,
They're
yeah.
such a silly,
They were
stupid, hardcore family.
Yeah.
And I love everybody. It's like Hildy's the mom, clearly, and you got like Walter doing his thing, but everybody else is just immature little pickpocket thieves who just don't care. And they're like, it's funny. I like how they describe the newspaper.
For Better Call Saul, Louis is clearly Yul Babineau.
Oh god. Stop!
Gotta
I'm
have
looking
like
at it differently now.
Better Call Saul and this like side by
It
side.
maps
They
direct.
should have
I
one
have to
episode
imagine Vince
just
Gilligan loves
recreating
this
it.
movie.
Yeah.
Could we talk about the scene where Molly first comes in when she's trying to plead with them? And what I liked was, like, at first they're completely just ribbing at her. They're like, oh, I'm sure. Like, they're basically not even giving her, like, any confidence. But then as soon as she leaves, do you notice how the atmosphere immediately changes?
Yes.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, like,
Yeah.
I think they realized that they were... You know, and it's true. Like, they
Yeah.
stop talking and there's, like, just silence.
It's a heaviness.
Yeah.
For sure. But you do realize, though, that they're not going to change their personalities.
No, of course
There's
not.
no, like, moral lesson
No,
to be
can-
had in this movie.
And can we also talk about Stairwell Sam and how he's a pervert?
Oh my god, yeah. That was cringy.
I know,
But
but
Sam.
He's the guy that was looking up the women's dresses as they were walking by.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh,
Wow. So that's
IMDb.
that's interesting.
IMDb,
So it's
get your
something that
stuff
got past
together.
the censors.
yeah,
Wow.
because you have to really pay attention. Almost, it's not like so
I was saying,
obvious.
it's so fast paced that sometimes
Yeah.
you don't really
Because you
realize
see him,
things
he's
going
staring
on.
and
And
there's
the
this
Hayes
be-
office is just like, I
and
don't
there's
know, I
this
don't know.
beautiful woman, and she walks, and you see he goes like this. But as soon as he does
gawking.
it, that's when one of the other guys basically says, "Hey," and then he turns around. So it's very quick. Like, you almost wouldn't even notice it if you weren't really paying attention.
I did
But I thought
notice
that was
that.
a cool little, almost like background moment.
Yeah.
And I was like, that guy's a perv. He's trying to look up that girl's skirt.
Who was the assistant? Was it Duffy? Was his name Duffy? The
Yeah.
guy with the glasses from
Duffy.
the
Yeah.
beginning? First off, I love that Duffy is the only person looking for integrity in the newspaper. The very beginning, they describe
No, he
he
hasn't
talks about
caught on yet.
clearly he's the innocent factor here, trying to make sure that the newspaper doesn't get sacked
Or
for
sued.
doing it or sued.
Sued is more
And I
likely.
love that he describes the paper like I think they're trying to do an article on the political sphere here that's going on. I guess they're trying to a new governor
Yeah, it's an
election,
coming
I
up.
think it is. And he comes in and they're talking about how they're supposed to write this article about him being a bad guy, and he's like, but we've been a Democratic newspaper for 20 years, and it's just
We'll
he's
be
like, I don't
Democratic
care.
After the next reprieve.
Exactly. And that's when that line about put Hitler on the funny page, on the front of the funny pages, comes in. I was like, a Democratic newspaper, and they're flying around doing all this other stuff. I'm like, oh my goodness.
Which I think it also
The biggest
shows
joke ever.
also that labels can be fluid depending on who's using them.
Yeah.
Because the whole like Duffy is concerned, we're democratic, we have ideals, and Cary Grant is like, well, they can be fluid for the moment, we
Screw our ideas.
yeah, we need to sort of get this. And
It's all about the truth. It's all about the story, and it's all
It
about
is
the
not
truth.
about the truth.
It is
No,
not
definitely
about
not
the
the truth.
truth, to
No.
be fair. But I think that's where Hildy kind of comes in, is that she tries to get the story out of them.
Almost.
And that's what I think he meant, almost by a female's touch.
No,
woman's
Hildy's kind of Hildy's just good at writing.
Yeah.
Hildy's not anymore.
that
honest
was
anymore.
I wish
No.
we could get that dialogue, what she writes up, because after it was like, my God, that
I
is
love
so
when she rips
poetic.
it up. She's like, you hear this? Just rips
And
it
I
up.
thought, oh my God, she didn't make a copy, and now they lost it. Like, that's what I
Well,
was
they didn't
thinking
have
of.
copiers. She would have had to written
She
a
didn't
second
save
one.
as.
No, but I thought
She
at
did
that
not
time
save
they.
as.
When did they?
That really got me.
But when did they?
No, she would have had to write another copy in order to
Yeah.
have two
They didn't
copies.
They didn't have copier machines. That machinery hadn't been.
But didn't they have something that would enable you to make copies at one? Well, never mind, forget about it. But
They
anyway,
would have had.
A
You would have
press, they
had,
would have had the press,
carbon
but-
paper. You would have
Yeah.
typed on carbon paper to have.
but
But
I
when
just,
you do newspaper, had in order in my school to take journalism. I took it for 2 years, and then I did history of journalism. They used to cut out the pieces, and they would stick them on the newspaper. So you would have a blank template, and you would put the news stories side by side and have
in
pictures.
Stranger Things, that's what.
Yeah, that's why it looks like
Nancy's
it's
doing.
Mhm. It took a while for that, and that's how they would send it to the printers. Is that would be what the final layout looks
Yeah,
like.
and then
I
the-
was
the
wondering
printers would
why
line
she
up
was
the little
doing that. Oh,
symbols.
thank
So
you.
not like today, where we have programs like InDesign and Photoshop, where we can just place
I
photos.
kind of love old school newspaper movies just because you get
It's
to see
kinda
that
cool.
stuff.
Mhm.
In,
I think there's a good sequence in Citizen Kane about the newspaper, and it's just oh my god.
It's a lot of fun. We had to do it for a project in our history of journalism
That's
thing,
cool.
and it was a lot of fun because we had to pretend to do a center spread. So we had to actually like place the pictures and be sure that like article like any of the blurbs could go anywhere, but you also had to remember copyright or like little text to let you know who the picture credits come from or what's going on. It was a lot about resource. It was a lot of spatial management. Makes you appreciate that.
Another really great scene, not from this movie, but like depicting old like printing and newspaper. It's a little more recent. Is the Post. How they print out the paper and setting up
Which one was the Post?
printing press.
The Spielberg one about the Pentagon Papers.
With Tom Hanks?
Tom Hanks
Yeah.
and Meryl Streep.
I didn't see that one.
It's really good. You should see it.
I
So
saw
was
the one that was like about the priests. Which one was that?
Spotlight.
Yeah. That was intense.
That
so
was intense.
the person who would it be like one person that would do the event, or there was like a team of people that would be in charge
It's
of?
usually there's one person in charge of a team.
Okay.
That you have your writers, and so when the writers
So-
are done, they hand it over to be proofread, and once it's proofread and they go and fix their mistake, like changes, then they hand the articles off,
Okay.
and then it's up to them to kind of figure out the layout.
And the boss man is the editor.
Boss man. Mr. Walter.
Oh, okay.
Mr. Walter's the boss man.
A Walter line that really got me was when he was just shouting on the phone, "Diabetes! I should have
I
known
saw
not to hire
that.
anyone with no disease."
Yeah. I was like, what?
Well,
So random.
Well, he also, the guy that's like his crook for hire, he says, "Oh, immigrants." Like, that's
Oh yeah. Oh, I
Yeah.
missed that.
Yeah, he did
Yeah,
say
so that made me think, is the guy supposed to be like, oh, his name is Louis. I'm sure
Louis,
he's supposed to be
yeah.
Italian.
Yeah.
But he goes, immigrants. Like when he leaves or something.
Yeah, there was one like almost Chico Marx aspect with that guy where Hildy said something about the blonde woman being an albino. And
Yes.
it's like she ain't no albino. She was born right here in this country.
Oh, yeah, that was funny. He's like, the albino. That was funny. Oh, but I love how when her fiance is describing, he was like, "Is she blonde? Does she look like?" She's okay. I'll be right there, and she knows immediately who it is. That's just really fun. Oh my god, she's very calm though. I love her how calm she is about this whole thing. Whether it's being shot at by police, whether it's her fiance in jail. It's
Or
like,
even knowing like with the check, like to put the check in the hat because she knew that Burns was gonna have Louis try to steal it.
oh yeah. Oh, I didn't pick up on that at first.
Yeah.
I thought it was that so he wouldn't lose it. Oh,
No, she just knows her
Oh, yeah.
ex-husband will send thieves after them.
Yeah. Oh my god.
She just knows Walter way too well.
I know. So
They know
fun.
each other very well.
Oh my god. Yeah, that was yeah, it's such a great movie. But I really laughed out loud when she tackled that guy. I was like, oh my god, get it. It was just one of the funniest moments ever, and she makes him listen to her. Wait, who's the guy that she tackles? Is that the sheriff? Who does she tackle?
No, that's just some. I think it's just some other reporter that she paid for the story.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Trying to figure out who she's tackling, but
Personally,
Tackles
I-
better than most of the New York Jets.
I love Walter. I love him. I hold him very dear. Now I was so in love with him so much. He's a crook and a swindler, but he's a funny crook and a swindler.
He's also Cary Grant, so
True.
Not that that does anything for me. I just thought his character in general, the character itself, was so funny, so witty. I love that there were like no hold punch. Like he didn't hold his punches back when talking to her. I'm like, that's amazing.
But I will
love
say-
him. He treated her equally, like as his equal. But I loved their whole dynamic. I just really like Hildy and him. I was reading one of the quotes here when he's like talking. She's like, "I suppose I proposed to you." And he's like, "Well, you practically did, making goo-goo eyes at me for 2 years until I broke down." And he like mimics her, and is like he's trying so hard. And it's just so
I like
great.
when she calls him wonderful in a loathsome sort of way.
Yeah, she's like, "Walter, you're wonderful in a loathsome sort of way." I love them. So what do you think? I am a crook? Yes. This is the banter I love between, like, not just, like, in this movie, but in general. I love seeing, like, exes in, like, movies be able to still carry on a relationship like that. That's really kind of just funny. Like, they can take a joke. But in this case, he really wants her back.
Mm-hmm.
I can't tell if it's for necessarily fully romantic purposes, or he's just about to lose one of the best writers he's ever had.
It's for
probably
selfish
the
purpose.
best.
It's like a maybe 60-40 split, maybe a 70-30. I don't know. 70, maybe best writer, 30 romantic. I don't know.
I would agree with that. Yeah.
So,
Am I the only one that believe? I mean, he's definitely selfish, but that he really, for like romantic, it's probably just me. Never mind. It's probably just me.
I'd swoon. Just the character itself, too. I'd swoon. He's a character, even in the modern times, I would swoon.
Jimmy McGill.
I mean, he's not a horrible guy. I don't think he's. I don't think he's a. Just because he's kind of a bad guy doesn't mean he's a bad guy. He's just trying to. He's doing what he's good at, and he's successful at it. Sometimes you gotta make ends meet. It's like Aladdin, technically. You look at Aladdin, like he was stealing and doing all sorts of stuff. Yet he became a prince.
That's true.
He was a criminal.
He was a criminal.
He's a dirty criminal, but he was a nice guy. Or was he a nice guy?
He gave his loaf of bread to those kids. That was a good looking loaf of bread.
I feel like being a lawyer for a meth kingpin and stealing food
That
are
came
very different
after
levels of crime.
That came after everything. Look, he didn't start by being that. It's after everything. All right.
I don't know. I still root for Aladdin, even
What
though he
I don't
stole.
know.
Yeah, of
Everyone
course
roots
we
for
do.
Aladdin.
We're rooting for Aladdin.
No one's
He's
rooting
hungry.
for Jafar.
Like,
You were what?
I said no
After
one roots
her
for
money.
Jafar.
They
in
might.
the beginning.
Who roots for Jafar?
Let's put that in.
who
Let's
are the
let,
people rooting for Disney villains?
Yeah.
I mean, aren't there any Disney villains you root for?
No,
Maleficent?
not really.
I mean, unless you, it depends on which version of Maleficent you're going.
Oh, the
She
Like-
was a petty woman.
animated
Like,
She's
I
a
think they're
petty woman who
cool,
didn't get
but,
invited
like,
to a
I'm
birth,
not-
Yeah, right.
to a
I'm not,
birth
like,
ceremony,
stars in the
and
right
she was
here,
upset.
like-
Oh no, Maleficent, go home. She's upset. She's petty.
Like,
Same
Hades
thing with
is
Ursula.
funny. Hades is funny, but I'm not rooting for him.
Yeah, best
But you
character in the
could.
movie.
Yeah.
But you could because he's been neglected. You know, he's not. He
Well, to
hasn't
be
been.
fair,
Sorry.
depending on which version of Greek mythology you're going with.
I'm talking about the cartoon. I am sure there are people that go for Disney villains. They're rooting for some of those villains. But anyway,
I think there's definitely
We digress.
some
Walter
races.
Burns is just a little stinker.
Yeah.
He's just Bugs Bunny. Like,
Yeah.
He is Bugs
Yeah,
Bunny.
Yeah.
hijinks. You know,
Ain't I
he's just
a
all about
stinker?
hijinks. Yeah.
oh, that's
Really
the case
thinking
in
about
point.
it.
In Bugs Bunny and Daffy Duck, who's supposed to be the villain?
well,
Daffy Duck. I always root for Daffy Duck. I want Bugs Bunny to
no,
get his ass
Daffy's
kicked.
Oh,
not the villain.
it's not-
Daffy's not the
Daffy's
villain.
the everyman.
He is.
That's how I
Daffy's
view
just an
Daffy.
angry guy.
Yeah, Daffy's angry and messy. Like, he never comes out on
And
top.
Bugs Bunny
Whereas Bugs
isn't
Bunny,
the villain.
He's-
yeah,
plays
he's a
second fiddle.
trickster
What about Elmer
god.
Fudd? Okay, Elmer Fudd.
I feel like he's kind of like the
Elmer
antithesis.
Fudd deserves everything coming
Yeah.
to him. Have you seen that guy?
Yeah.
I root for Elmer Fudd.
No, I'm rooting for
What
Bugs
about
Bunny.
Yosemite Sam?
I root for him
Fraggle,
too.
fraggle.
I root for him too. There, I just proved my point. There's a villain that I root for.
I was listening to Eclipse album, and there's an amazing part on one song where Pusha T claims that where he talks about his mom being surprised he became a criminal because his family wasn't, and she was just like, you know, was probably watching Yosemite Sam walk around with two guns, and that really got me. Just
Oh my god.
pinning it all on Yosemite Sam.
I'm a cartoon character. Good.
The thug life right there. Yosemite Sam.
Well, a lot of times you could prevent these Disney villains if you just, you know.
Walter
Yeah.
Burns could never be prevented. He
No.
was born like that.
Yeah.
I love him. I love him. I would go to the. I would follow him. He's the kind of like journalistic, like crazy man who gets the story and does what he needs to do, but he's having fun while doing it. I want to be a part
So
of that.
I actually never saw this movie before I picked it. I picked it because I heard it was really funny, and I was just like, yeah, it's on Canopy. It's gonna be a good time.
Yeah.
And yeah, this really this was some good stuff.
It was a good one.
I need to get back into screwball comedies. I've only seen a couple, but they're all so goddamn good.
Yeah.
Just-
It's kind of like you said too. He's Burns is like basically Roger Sterling.
yes,
You know?
Definitely. That's who Roger Sterling thinks he is.
Yeah, just 100%.
See,
Yeah.
that proves my point.
Exactly.
Yeah, this was a fun one.
Yeah.
All right. Any final thoughts?
I really enjoyed this movie. I just enjoyed it. It was great. It was a good time.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Hildy, phenomenal.
Really enjoyed it from start to finish. It was a great
It's
film.
my girl.
Walter has my heart.
So who wants to take us out?
Folks, stay frosty. We'll see you next time.
Bye, everyone.